It's Lori from Lori's Little Bit of Crafting. And let's get this adjusted just a little bit. I think that should be good. Make sure the volume on my other device is turned down. Hello. It's Lori from Lori's Little Bit of Crafting. I think I said that. And I am back from Hobart, Indiana, where I spent a day yesterday stamping and seeing some new products and putting some things together with, I don't know, about 150 or so other stamping enthusiasts. So I am an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in the United States, coming to you from Wisconsin very early on Sunday morning. All right, I started putzing Saturday night, and you know, one thing leads to another, and before you know it, it's after midnight, and now it's about 12:45, I guess, and we're gonna get going. Hopefully this will be kind of short. I did a couple of excuse me, I prepped a couple of the projects kind of ahead of time, so I've got 3 different versions, so it's kind of like this textured notes trifecta sort of thing. We'll see what you think. This is a really pretty stamp set. It's cling stamp, so all of these have the foam on them, so you can stamp them just right on your papers. There are some coordinating dies. These are the textured notes dies, and hopefully you can see all the detail in these borders, so they're all a little bit different until you get down to the smaller sizes, and then the detail continues, or it repeats rather. And then there's a small sentiment rectangle as well. I am also using this Forever Plaid embossing folder. Now, this wasn't a mini catalog. I think it's an online exclusive. I hope it's not gone. I forgot to look. If it's gone, I apologize. And then this is the paper I'm using. This is the Woven Textures 12 by 12 designer series paper. So you get 12 sheets. There's, I think, 3 each of 4 designs, or I use some up and I don't have all of the designs anymore. But these are one side of them. They're all 2-sided. And it looks like, there we go. They're all 2-sided. So there's the opposite sides. I'm not sure if I've got them the A side or the B side up, but that's basically all the papers. So I'm just going to use a few little pieces of this for some card fronts, and let's get going. I'll kind of talk you through what I did. So because I hadn't worked with these stamps before, but I've seen some really beautiful cards, I thought I would just stamp out some colors on some scratch first to see, do I want it full strength ink? Do I want it stamped off ink? Do I want it mixed? And what I ended up doing is kind of mixing it up. So first off, I've got my card base that's 8.5 by 5.5. It's scored at 4 1/4. You can do 2 of these on one piece of 8.5 by 11 cardstock. If you score first and cut second, then you only have to score once and you'll have your 2 bases. I actually have 3 bases here, so I did one separate and have an extra one off to the side. So what I did for this one is I took some of that designer series paper on one of the back sides, and it gives me this kind of tweed design. Hopefully you can see that. Let me turn on another light, maybe that'll help. But it gives it a textured look, almost like a canvas bag, but it's smooth. Obviously it doesn't have, the paper doesn't actually have texture. And what I did then was I took this stamp with my garden green and I stamped it full strength right on the designer series paper. And then I did this stamp in Old Olive, and I did full strength here, and then I didn't re-ink it, and I just did my 2nd generation, or my stamped off version there. I got a piece of this basic beige ribbon here. I think this is a 1/4 inch-ish, 3/8 inch probably. It's really flexible. Sometimes the ribbons are really stiff, but this is a nice ribbon. It should make some really good bows and knots. But I'm just using it for a little bit of accent under here. And then I used this stamp here with pecan pie. And I did this one stamped off. And then I just fussy cut around it. And then I just put it all together. For the inside then, and this piece here is 3 3/4 by 5, because I wanted a little bit more of the border to show than a normal 4 by 5 1/4 layer would show. So I did the inside layer the same size. And again, I did some full strength stamping. So full strength with this one, stamped off, and then a 3rd generation there. So I did not re-ink the stamp at all when I did these 3 stamps. So it's just 1 inking, bam, there's the inside of my card. All right, so that's card number 1. Kind of close to a SIP card or a stamp, ink, and paper card, except, you know, I've got some embellishments here, and I did put this up on dimensionals, and I have that piece of ribbon. So these embellishments are these pressed flower motifs. They're heavy, they're metal, but there's some texture to them. And I always slice the side of my bag so that I can just slide them in and out. So hopefully you can see all the detail on those. My package kind of got a little messed up, but they're fine. So that's what I used for that one. So let's set this card off to the side here. And then my next card, I think I'm going to save this one for last. For this card, we're going to go ahead and do some stamping. And what I did was I took again a layer of that same designer series paper, and I did it at 4 by 5 1/4. I took I took this biggest die here, and I cut out the outside. Now I also did it on a piece of this Blackberry Bliss because I want my frame to have a little stability. And you can see some of the framing around the edge of here. I could trim them off. I don't think it's going to matter because it's going to sit right on here, and really you don't even really see it. So I wanted to have this a little more substantial. I did put some adhesive strips on here. So these foam adhesive strips are really nice for this kind of thing, and for, like, if you're doing shaker cards. But when you have just a thin strip, like to make a frame like I'm doing here, those strips work really nice, and it keeps your layer from buckling or getting rippled because you might not have attached it completely. So we're going to do this as a frame, and I want this piece down here because I actually kind of want it to look like this is the mat or the frame, and my image is going to be set back a little bit. So let's go ahead and do some stamping on here. And I think I'm just going to burnish this just a little bit more. There, it's laying flatter now. So what I'm going to do is, just like this image here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take this stamp, and I'm going to do the darkest one first in the garden green. So we'll just ink this up and stamp it in the middle-ish. And you don't really have to worry too much if it's tilted one way or the other because it's foliage. So it's pretty forgiving, okay? And then we'll close up this garden green. We'll do some old olive for these other leaves. And my old olive, I think, needs to be re-inked. So I'm just going to do full strength here, and then I'm going to stamp off up here. Okay, just subtle color there. And then let's get a piece of basic white scrap. That might not be big enough. I think it's just big enough. We'll go ahead and work with it. And I almost lost that. Let's go ahead and put some ink on here. And we're going to fussy cut this. All right. So that gives just some really cool detail. So it actually looks like the bottom of a woven basket or like a trivet sort of thing. So let me go ahead and just fussy cut this quick. I am not much of a fussy cutter. I would prefer to use punches or dies. Only because fussy cutting seems to take me longer than I like. I would rather have, I guess, the more instant gratification of a punch or die, because you run it through and you're done. And here sometimes, this one's not bad because it's mostly just a circle, but it's a little like wobbly because I don't really want to have a white border on it. But you can see I'm kind of moving my paper and not moving my scissors so much. And that's what helps you kind of get a seamless cut. All right, we'll get rid of that. And let's go ahead and get a piece of ribbon on here. And I'm going to make this a little bit shorter, just because I want it inside that piece of designer series paper. So before I put the frame on, I'm going to go ahead and put this layer on because I feel I can probably get that centered better and then work the frame around it. So that's my theory. We'll see if it works, because I didn't actually put one of these together before I was starting. So I just kind of eyeballed it and thought, oh, that'll look okay. So I think that looks pretty good. With the liquid glue, you can shift it a little bit if you need to until it's set. It might be slightly crooked. I think it's good now. All right. And then I'm going to go ahead and put this framing piece on with these adhesive strips. And I just basically cut the long sides first from my sheet, and then I had a couple of other smaller pieces from a previous project. So I just put those on the end. That's why these are cut smaller, because they were already cut from another project. So let's go ahead and put this on here. So it's almost like an eclipse card in reverse, because like with an eclipse card, sometimes you have the centerpiece raised up and you might have a dark layer attached behind it. So you can kind of see my dark layer inside. So it is actually kind of like a frame. All right. And then we can put this on here. We'll just use a little seal here. And the stitching is similar, but it is a little bit different. So it's hard to really tell which side is intended to be the top. So pick the side that you like best and put it down however you want. All right. And then this piece, I'm going to go ahead and put on dimensionals again. And I'm just going to use a couple little scrap pieces here. And I'm not stamping on that one like I stamped on this one, just so I wouldn't have quite so many pieces. And we're going to put this, and maybe because this frayed a little bit when I was putting it down, I think I'm going to put this kind of over here. We'll just cover up the ends of those stems. And then this piece, we're going to trim to be over here. So I think I want to do an angle. So when I do my angle cuts, and I learned this from Shannon West, if you save this piece that you've trimmed off and flip it over and bring it to the other side, you can use that as a template to make your other cut at exactly the same angle. How genius is that? All right. So then I think I want to trim just a little bit off of here, and hopefully I can trim straight. I could have gotten my trimmer, but the piece is getting so small that it might not work very well. If I try not to take too many bites at it, it usually comes out a little bit straighter. All right, so let's get those out of here. And then this, I'm just going to glue on here. And this piece is going at the opposite angle, so I'm going to go ahead and trim this so that the angle matches. And I might need a little bit more of an angle. There. That'll work. And then I'm going to put a dimensional on this side, and then I'm going to put some glue here because I don't want a lopsided layer. All right, so dimensional here where we're going to have a void spot. And then we can put some glue on this other side. And we'll put a couple of embellishments on. I think I have the layer already laid inside this one. And then let's put on a few of these gems. And I like to use my Take Your Pick tool. Just slide these off. And I don't know if I want to use a big one or not. If I do that, whoops. I might have to do 5 of these because I have all of them over on one side. That might look kind of silly though. Let's move this one over here. And I left the little glue dot, so let's just get that off of there. And we'll take this off, and I'll use a different glue dot for that another time. So I think that'll work with just those 3. All right, so that's the second card. And let's take a look at that inside layer. Where did I set that? Here's the inside layer for this one. And I could trim this in, actually I'm going to keep that one for this one. We're going to use this one for this card because I've trimmed it with the die so that the design matches. And I'm just going to put a couple of more of the sprigs on here with this stamp and the old olive. And the reason why I have the Post-it notes on here is that I'm just kind of masking because I don't want my color to go inside this border, because to me it's going to just look a little disjointed, I think. So we're going to just put this here, stamp off there, and then let's move this up here just to cover up where that's the die cut design is. And then we can put some more ink on here because I don't know that it'll transfer nicely because I was off the paper. Okay. So that's the inside of this one. So I'm working on this one. So this will be the inside of this card. All right. So card number 2, a little stepped up because of the frame and the embossing, or the die cut rather, and then that's the inside. I will attach that later. So that's card number 2. And then for card number 3, most of the stamping on here is done. What I did was I took this same designer series paper that looks like that canvas bag, and rather than stamping on this, I used the Forever Plaid embossing folder. So even though the paper had the appearance of texture, I wanted to give it real texture. All right. So I went ahead and ran it through the embossing folder. All right. So if you're not familiar with the Stampin' Up! Embossing folders, first off, you always want to make sure you're putting the fold in the machine first. But this line here is for any time you have a design that really needs to be pretty square up and down. You don't want it to be sideways unless it's intended. Like I have done this one with a diagonal plaid just for the appearance of it. But for this particular card, I wanted it to go up and down. So I made sure when I put in my layer of cardstock that I lined it up on this line before I ran it through my machine. And that way you're sure to get that design to actually go how you want it to go. So let's go ahead and put some glue on here. And I'll try to get this lined up so that it's centered. I think that's pretty good. And then again, I used those dies. And I used this one here, the smaller one. So 1, 2, 3, it's a 4th one. It's the one right in the middle. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the same one. So I cut this out using, and it gives you kind of like almost like a running stitch if you were sewing by hand. And I'm going to put this one over here on dimensionals just because I want to see a little bit more of the texture. I could put this right in the center and you'll still see some of the texture, but I just want to give it a little something different. I could even go up here, but I like it in the center better. So let's do some more dimensionals here. And I am working again on the end of a sheet. I've been going through a lot of these lately. So I just cut all those ends so it makes it easy to put them on. And we will take your pick tool to get these peeled off. Let's try that again. There we go. That one was just being stubborn. Oh, and for this, I embossed this with white embossing powder. So Versamark on here rather than a color, and then I just heat embossed it. All right. I didn't want to go through the steps of that. I think pretty much everybody knows how to do heat embossing. But if you don't, let me know and I can do a separate video just kind of focusing on the heat embossing, because that's just a really cool technique. All right. And then here I've taken that sentiment and I did it on that same textured paper. Now the other thing that I want to do here is I stamped it first and then I just cut it down to size. I trimmed it with my little trimmer. What I'm going to do, because I want this to stand out a little bit because it kind of just fades into that background layer, we're just going to put a little bit of ink around the edges here. And that'll kind of give it the appearance that there is a piece of cardstock behind there without having that extra layer. All right. So again, I'm going to put just a little dimensional here. So we'll use some mini dimensionals. I think this will probably work. So we're going to put that close to this end. Excuse me. And then we'll put glue on this other side again. And I have to decide if I want to do, I didn't put any ribbon behind there. So let's set this off to the side for a second because I think I want to do some ribbon and I think I want to color it. So let's make this a little longer than we need it. And let's get our little scrap paper out here. And when I color my ribbon, all I'm going to do, we'll go up here so you can kind of see a little bit better. Hopefully this blending or this alcohol marker isn't dried out. This side of my marker cracked, so I have some electrical tape on here to kind of hold it in there. I need to order new ones. But anytime you have a relatively light ribbon, all you need to do is take your alcohol, your Stampin' Blends alcohol marker, and color it. And I always use the side of that brush tip. The alcohol will dry nicely. If you use a regular marker, it's not going to dry the same. Sometimes they do get a little stiff, but if you work them out a little bit, they soften up again. And because this is a thicker ribbon, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over and do the other side as well. Because you see it didn't go all the way through. With some of the thinner ribbons, it goes all the way through on the first swipe with the marker. Or the alcohol blend, rather. So this tip is actually getting kind of worn out too. I use my blends quite a bit, and then when I have classes too, a lot of times they get a little abused because people who don't use them a lot don't necessarily use them in the way that they're intended to be used. All right, so I think that'll be pretty good. I'm going to kind of let that dry a little bit here. And then I'll end up trimming this again. But if we put this here, I'm going to just fold this over here and kind of stuff up the extra. Let's see how this looks. So if I put this here, and then if we put this like so, I think that'll be all right. So let's go ahead and trim this one about here. I'm going to trim off the frayed end there. And we'll just put a little runner on here, some of our seal, to kind of hold it in place. And then I'm going to put a little bit of fresh glue because that glue obviously dried. It's still kind of tacky, but I'm going to put it a little bit more to the edges so it goes on the outside of where this ribbon is going to be. And then hopefully, if we put this here, this will go here. We may actually have to do the dimensional under the ribbon. So we'll put this under here instead. And then we'll put glue all the way across here. See, sometimes you just have to shift your approach when you're putting a card together, because I didn't really know how this was going to turn out. But that should be good. And then on this layer for the inside, I again cut it the same size as this. So this is 3 1/4 by 5. And I stamped full strength, 2nd generation, 3rd generation, and that will go inside there. And let's put a few little gems on this one. These pressed flower motifs. see if we can get a few of these here. I think that's good. So depending on the color scheme you used, this stamp set would be certainly suitable for a masculine card. Even the Blackberry Bliss is not necessarily a feminine color. It might not be my first choice to send as a masculine card. But since there's not flowers on here, there's not lots of laciness, this would certainly be a good card to give to a man for birthday or even Father's Day. You could change up the sentiment on there. So those are the 3 cards I've got for you today. So this was basically stamp, ink, and paper. This was some die cutting and then using some extra foam adhesive strips to get that set up to be like a frame. And then here we used dry embossing and powder embossing. Also colored that ribbon with our alcohol blends and did a little inking on that edge of that sentiment piece. You could do that with that alcohol blend too, rather than dipping it in the ink like I did. If you just take that brush and go along the edge, basically just holding the alcohol blend like this against the paper, you can get that framing on there. All right, so that's what I have for you tonight. I hope you like these cards. Certainly feel free to recreate them. If you know somebody who you think might enjoy it, certainly please share my video. And until next time, happy stamping.